Welcome into Enemy Sidelines presented by Microsoft Teams. My guest this week, Chicago Bears beat reporter Adam Jahns. He covers the Bears for The Athletic up in Chicago. Welcome in, Adam. It's great to have you. I know it's not the season either of these two teams wanted, nor the seasons that we wanted to cover this year, but here we are in December. So let's talk about these Bears, shall we? Because 5-1 to start the season, and now they're in the midst of a 6-game losing skid. I mean, what's the attitude like in Chicago, and what's that roller coaster been like?
I actually think the Bears should be thankful right now that there are no fans allowed in Soldier Field, because they would be booed quite harshly right now. It's gotten that bad, Deepi. I think we all expected some offensive struggles this season, but at least recently it's been the defensive decline, the lack of production from Khalil Mack and Eddie Jackson, the superstars of this team. That's been really frustrating for the organization right now. Two very bad losses against the Lions and Packers, especially on defense.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to get to you more about the defense, but what's the attitude like now? You've got 4 more games left in the season. The Bears can try to turn the losing skid around. Probably playoffs may be out of reach, but what's just the general attitude now in December?
Yeah, Bears coach Matt Nagy has been using this message: personal pride. Let's have some personal pride in how we prepare, how we coach this team, how we play on the field, everything we do. Let's have some personal pride. And really, that's what it's come down to. The playoffs don't look like a realistic possibility, even though the Bears are 1 game out. It's going to take a lot of help for that to really come to fruition. So have some personal pride. Let that show in every action that you have. That's the message right now from Matt Nagy. We'll see what that comes to be on the field against Deshaun Watson.
All right, well, let's talk about the Bears quarterback situation, because we've all watched it rather closely this offseason. They bring in Nick Foles. It starts off with Mitchell Trubisky, then he gets benched. Foles comes in. There's been injuries between the two of them, and now it looks like that Mitchell Trubisky is the starter once again. So how did he do? I know the Bears lost on Sunday against the Lions, but it seemed like the offense was moving the ball, doing some things well. What does Trubisky offer the offense maybe that Foles doesn't?
Well, Matt Nagy called that Lions loss, as bad as it was, especially in those final 5 minutes, the best game by far. That's by far for the offense. So that's a significant statement, considering he benched Trubisky all the way back in week 3, and he stuck with Nick Foles for that long, for 7 starts that weren't very good for Foles whatsoever. So he brings a little bit more in terms of athleticism. The offense does look different in terms of play calls, in terms of getting him on the move, doing things more with his feet. The run game is a bit different too. That's been productive with Trubisky under center. That was true in the beginning of the season, and it's true right now in the past 2 games, his past 2 starts against the Packers and the Lions. So that should still stay the same against the Texans. But yeah, I think right now the storyline in Chicago with this game, especially with Trubisky getting it at this start, it's what we all wanted. It's Mitch Trubisky versus Deshaun Watson, because we know that's a big storyline here in Chicago.
Both of those quarterbacks coming out in the same draft, and there was a lot of chatter about them that offseason. I remember it well, and it will be fun. They face off for the first time really in their NFL careers. You mentioned play calling, so let's talk about that, because I know Matt Nagy handed off the play calling duties to his offensive coordinator, Bill Lazor. Does the offense look much different with Lazor calling the plays? How has it changed?
It looked different against the Lions, and maybe that's Trubisky and him getting comfortable with each other. Maybe it's more input from Trubisky after him coming back from a shoulder injury as well. So there's a lot of layers to that Trubisky conversation that you have to get through. But yeah, the whole decision to give those play calling responsibilities to Bill Lazor, that was an effort from Matt Nagy, maybe a desperate effort from Matt Nagy to really fix this offense, where change is just needed, where enough is enough. It's time to try something different. What's going on is not working. So let's give Bill Lazor, who has a play calling history with the Dolphins and the Bengals, let's give him a shot. It was better against the Lions, significantly better against the Lions than it was against the Packers. But sometimes the opponent matters too. The Lions don't have the best defense in the NFL right now. The Packers are a tad bit better, and they do have Aaron Rodgers. So there's other factors to take into account, especially when looking at the Bears offense and who's calling plays.
All right, the run game, it suffered its own share of injuries. Tariq Cohen went out on injured reserve early on in the season, but it seems like second year back, David Montgomery's really stepped up nicely in his place and been kind of a bright spot for that offense. He's averaging 4.1 yards per carry. What does he bring to the run game?
He's a very violent runner. You're going to have to come after him in waves to get him down. He doesn't go down easily, doesn't go down with arm tackles. Very violent in most everything he does. Like every carry he has, there's a tad of violence to it. And Bears fans love that, especially with Walter Payton, being such a legend here, having that statue outside Soldier Field. So David Montgomery has really endeared himself to a lot of fans for his running style. He'll definitely bring that against the Texans. To me, the biggest takeaway in terms of Montgomery's production over the past couple of weeks is actually having some stability and some continuity in that offensive line. They finally have found something that works. It's been a big problem all year long, a lot of injuries, some COVID-19 concerns as well, but they finally have a combination up front where it all starts. We know that, Deepi, up front where things are clicking, where there's some continuity, where there's some chemistry working in the trenches.
All right, well, let's stick with the offense a little bit longer because Allen Robinson, he's really led the team as far as receiving yards, 904 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. Even with all the quarterback changes, he's been really productive on the field. So what has really stood out to you about Allen Robinson this year?
Yeah, well, there's a couple ways I could go with this. Like he's coming off a game where he made a 4-yard reception on a 3rd and 5 play in the final seconds against the Lions, where if he makes that first down, the Bears get a couple shots at the end zone, or maybe having a different conversation right now. Maybe the Bears some way, somehow pull out a miraculous victory against the Lions. But instead, he gets 4 yards when the first down was there. So right now in Chicago, I think fans are kind of upset with him because they missed an opportunity there. But overall, he's probably been their most consistent threat offensively. I think that's actually safe to say. He's been that reliable no matter who's at quarterback. He's been their best player on offense, but he does leave you wanting more, a little bit more, whether it's that 3rd down play against the Lions, whether it's losing a jump ball in the end zone against the Packers. He's lost a couple of jump balls this season where defenders have made interceptions by actually pulling the ball away from him. So even though he is the Bears' best player by far offensively, and maybe one of their best players overall on this team, he still had a season that leaves you wanting a bit more because of close calls like that, close plays where it could have gone either way.
All right, well, let's switch gears and talk about that Bears defense because you alluded to it a little bit earlier. They've just not really stood up to some of the expectations, and they had a lot of high expectations. Yeah. That pass rush led by Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Robert Quinn, they've struggled in the past 2 games, but was there something different in that 5-1 stretch where they were playing so well? I mean, what seemed to have changed over the course of the season for them?
Yeah, it's quite the mystery because they've invested so much money in this defense, really at all 3 levels. Draft capital too. This is where the team is built. Like, this is supposed to be their strength. Khalil Mack is a superstar, one of the best defenders in the league, but his numbers just aren't there. He's not close to leading the league in sacks right now. Robert Quinn hasn't had a sack, hasn't touched the quarterback, really, I don't think, since his first snap for the Bears, all the way going back to week 2. So that's a baffling stat, especially when you see, Leonard Floyd, who Robert Quinn replaced, having a big season for the Los Angeles Rams right now. So there's a lot of questions about this defense because there's a lot of money spent on this defense. And Chuck Pagano, the defensive coordinator, is under some fire right now, but Matt Nagy's under some fire right now in Chicago. So I don't know if he's getting a pass, but there is some added scrutiny to what he's doing in terms of his play calls, in terms of his game plans, in terms of how aggressive he's getting after quarterbacks right now, especially after what the Lions and Packers have done to that defense.
All right, I want to ask you about inside linebacker Roquan Smith. He's actually part of our Next Gen stat presented by AWS. He's top 5 in the league amongst tacklers. He has 110 heading into week 14. So just a top 10 draft pick a few years ago. How does his presence affect the middle of that defense, and what does he bring?
Yeah, Deepi, this is the feel-good story this year for the Bears. This is a player who had some questions about his first 2 years, trying to find his way in the NFL. Did he look lost at times? And last year, he missed a game because of personal reasons, and it took him a couple games to get back into the flow of the game. This year, he's been one of the Bears' best defenders. He's taken over the play calls in the middle of the defense. He's on the field for every single play in every single game. he's been good too. A lot of tackles for loss, a lot of impact plays. He's had some sacks too. He's all over the field. He's got that sideline speed that you want out of modern day linebackers. He's great in coverage as well. So if you're ranking the feel good stories for the Bears right now, it's Roquan Smith #1, because the Bears, they love their linebackers. Dick Butkus, Brian Urlacher, Mike Singletary. This is a franchise that loves its linebackers, and Roquan Smith just happens to be the next great one.
Well, another feel-good story, I think, has got to be the specialist, your return teams in Cordarrelle Patterson. He's just had an outstanding season. I've only caught a few Bears games this year, but it seems like whenever he's returning the ball, it's always a big play with a big gain, a lot of yards. What makes him so elusive? And are you surprised that teams continue to kick to him?
He's had a few teams. He's scared a few teams. Let's say that every week you see the short kick, you see the long kicks out of the end zone. He's that good. He's one of the best returners of all time. And we know returners well in the city because we've had Devin Hester. Like he was the superstar of superstars when it comes to kick returners. So we know what we're talking about here in Chicago. And Cordarrelle Patterson, he's right up there. He may not be as good as Hester, but he's up there in terms of the kick return game. Devin Hester was a great punt returner. Cordarrelle Patterson might be the better kick returner. So obviously the Texans should be scared of him. The stats speak for themselves. The production speaks for themselves. He opened the game against the Lions with a big return. And he's turning out to be quite the productive running back as well. The Bears found a role for him in that situation, or at least in terms of having him be the backup for David Montgomery. So he's been a good free agent signing for Ryan Pace and the Bears. And yeah, safe to say he's one of the best returners of all time. So don't kick to him, Texans.
I was going to say, I don't know why anybody's been kicking to him, but maybe there's something out there that I'm missing. All right, Adam, I know it's a busy week for you all. What stories are you working on for The Athletic this week?
Yes. Right now, the scrutiny of Matt Nagy and his play calls are definitely a big storyline. But to me, it's the Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky storyline that I think takes precedence over everything. We all know the story here very well in Chicago. The Bears traded up to #2, not to draft Deshaun Watson, who was coming off a national title and a successful career at Clemson, not to draft Patrick Mahomes, but to draft Mitchell Trubisky, who's had his ups and downs here in Chicago. Obviously, we just talked about him being benched in favor of Nick Foles this year. Deshaun Watson is one of the best young quarterbacks in the game going right now. He's one of the most exciting players, one of the best leaders in the NFL right now. Different stories unfolding right now here for the Bears. I think the Bears would love to have Deshaun Watson, but obviously they got quarterback concerns. So that Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky storyline is #1 here right now in Chicago.
It certainly is a good one, but I got to say people in Houston and Texans fans are very happy that unfolded the way it did in 2017, because this team's gone through its own share of quarterback struggles. Adam, thank you so much for the time. Always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Happy to help.